Okay, before I get started, I just need to say, any game that lets you look like this in it, there's only one reaction that is appropriate. With that out of the way, welcome back for another Game Break, everybody. Today is a review for Ghost of Tsushima. It will be spoiler-free, but I will still touch on the story and give some general thoughts about it. So let's get started. In terms of graphics, there's a lot of parts in this game where the graphics are done mind-blowingly well, like so good. But then there are other parts in terms of graphics that the game doesn't quite hold up so well. And I feel, and part of the reason for this is playing The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, that game had problems, but in terms of visuals, it was fucking amazing. So I definitely was comparing the two games quite a bit. But I think definitely in some ways, Ghost of Tsushima is better than The Last of Us Part 2. And then obviously The Last of Us Part 2 is better in certain ways than Ghost of Tsushima. For example, the lip sync in Ghost of Tsushima seemed to be a little bit off to me, but I did play with the Japanese audio. So maybe it could have been a result of that. I didn't play with the English audio option, so maybe the lip sync was a bit better. But it was something I noticed, but it wasn't too bad because I did have to read subtitles most of the time. But once again, that's being nitpicky, but it is something I noticed, so I felt like I should mention it. And in terms of motion capture, I noticed the difference between the two games as well. Like with the opening sequence, for example, as epic as set piece as it was, it didn't grab me right away. I know it did a lot of people, but for me, this game, I mean, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it, but it took me a little bit longer to get into it for some reason. It just took a little bit of time to capture me fully. I was honestly wondering right out of the gate if I was going to enjoy this game. But honestly, the more you play it, the better it gets and the better it looks. Like some of the environments you encounter later on in the game are just fucking fantastic. And I also said, the animation seemed a little bit stiff right out of the gate. But honestly, the more I played the game, the more I appreciated the animations that were in it, especially the ones that occur in battle. I know I've mentioned this a little bit already, but the environments in this game are out of this fucking world. It has some of the most beautiful environments I've ever seen in a video game. And I knew it would have good environments from some of the trailers I'd seen, but holy shit, like this game is just chock full of great looking environments. Everywhere you go, every new area you see is just mind-bogglingly good. They make an excellent use of color in this game, contrasting things extremely well. And the swaying grass and the vast open fields of it. Oh, this game could have been all a grassy field and I would have been absolutely fine with it. And a nice little touch with big grassy fields is if you're riding your horse through it, Jin will lean down and he'll just like brush his fingers through like the top ends of the grass he's riding through. Like such a good fucking little touch. And oh my God, this game's grass is amazing. And the lighting in this game is goddamn amazing. The sunsets and the sunrises are incredible. They can be absolutely blinding and they can actually even affect you in battle because enemies will be coming at you and you can't see what direction they're coming from because of the light. And then, just the way the game looks when it's high noon and just like the brightness it gives to the world and how it makes all the colors pop on the map. And just the way it makes you look in your like sweet ass armor set sometimes and the way it reflects off the metal of your helmet. Oh, it's just so fucking good. The environments and the lighting are honestly a good portion of what make this game so great to play. And once again, I said, the more I played this game, the more I enjoyed it. And it's so true. The more I played this game, the more beautiful it got. And I just started to appreciate its visuals more and more and more and more and more as I played. And it just got more and more beautiful and it never stopped. And you have the ability to really minimize your HUD in this game, which allows you to have a more immersive experience. But there was one issue with it, and it's the fact that it can sometimes affect your positioning in terms of quests. Sometimes you need to be standing in a very specific spot, and having the HUD turn to essentially expert mode could make things a little bit harder to find. So that was one little problem with it. Ghost of Tsushima's open world exploration is very much what you would expect in today's gaming age. And while it is not an evolution of the genre, it is still a smooth and enjoyable open world gaming experience. I'm a completionist for the most part, and I really enjoy exploring large open maps and finding hidden areas and filling out the map completely and, you know, getting all the little icons that pop up and seeing what's there. And Ghost of Tsushima does not make that task annoying with the, you know, guiding wind system that it has. It's very easy to set a checkpoint on a map, and just if you kind of lose your way, you can flick the controller and it will point you in the right direction. So you're not constantly going in and out of the map. So really, you know, it really smooths out the gameplay in that regard. And another nice little touch that they added is there will be a golden bird that will appear every once in a while. You'll often hear it before you see it because it has a very distinct chirp. And when that happens, you know there is a secret somewhere nearby, whether it's a fox den to increase your charm power, or if it's a bamboo cutting station essentially where you can increase your resolve, or if it's a hot spring that will increase your health. There will be something nearby, and generally they're very easy to follow and they will lead you right to the item that is close. And this next thing I'm going to mention is absolutely key. It makes this game more enjoyable, and if it doesn't happen in more games from this point forward, I'm actually going to find it incredibly fucking annoying. And that is, in Ghosts of Tsushima, you don't have to dismount to collect items, generally speaking, especially if you're out in the middle of a field and you're not in an enemy camp or fortress or something where you're going to be on foot anyway. No, if you're on horseback, you can collect bamboo and flowers and supplies that are just laying on the ground without having to dismount. And it just expedites the gameplay so much. Oh, it was just... I honestly can't believe I was playing games without it up until this point, because it makes the gameplay so much smoother. And Ghost of Tsushima gets major fucking points for that shit. Another thing that was unique to this game was the Japanese haikus that you could encounter and create out in the world. And while I'm not usually one for poetry, the haikus definitely fit very well with the Japanese aesthetic. And there was one in particular in the game that takes place during the story that gave me some major feels while creating it. So I definitely will give a shout out to the haikus, because I was expecting them to just be like, kind of like, oh, whatever, like I'm making poetry. But no, there was one that really got me. So good job, guys. Oh, and a quick aside, I love foxes. They're one of my favorite animals. So the fact that you get to encounter them on a regular basis in this game and you get to follow them around, and they let you pet the fluffy boy. Good job, Sucker Punch. Really appreciate that. Another shining light for Ghost of Tsushima is its combat system. It starts off very basic to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this combat. But the more you play the game and the more abilities you unlock and the more things you can do, oh, it becomes so satisfying getting in combat. Oh, it's just so much fun, and it makes this game an absolute joy to play. And especially when you get everything down pat and you can switch between things really quickly. Like, for example, there's 4 different sword stances in this game, each of them very much meant to fight a specific type of enemy unit. Once you get them down pat and you can switch between them very quickly on the fly for the appropriate type of enemy, oh, it makes combat super fluid, and you just feel such a badass just changing your sword stances on the fly and just owning the shit out of anything that comes your way. Oh, it's so fucking good. You will also get a chance to get a variety of ninja tools throughout the game, and they will get you out of some incredibly tough spots in terms of combat. And they will also allow you to just mow down enemies extremely quickly if you want to. A good example of this is kunai, being able to hit up to 3 people at once, very often killing enemy archers in one hit. And smoke bombs, which combined with the triple assassination kill, you could mow down up to 15 enemies within seconds of each other. And the nice thing with ninja weapons is you can very much turn it into your play style if you want, because they're not super rare. You can find them quite easily in the open world, and you can also purchase them as well, but I didn't need to purchase them a single time during the whole game. So since you can find them in abundance, you can use them all the time, and it just makes the gameplay that much better because you have a lot of variety in terms of how you want to tackle a certain set of enemies or a certain problem on the map. So no, definitely a good design decision on Sucker Punch's part, allowing you to have those unique play styles on the go. This game also gives you the option to just honestly charge through the front goddamn door in most situations as well, except for maybe some of the hostage situations you will encounter. You can just literally walk up to every enemy in the game and just initiate a standoff and then engage them in sword combat. But the thing with standoffs in this game is they begin incredibly easy. They're very basic. And by the end of the game, it became one of the most difficult aspects of the gameplay, just doing standoffs. And there were certain points where I was getting so goddamn stubborn about it. I was dying over and over and over and over again, just letting myself get killed because I was failing in the standoffs because the enemy AI was just kicking my ass. But when you do eventually get it and you're able to like stand off 5 enemies in a row and just essentially thin their ranks right out of the gate, oh, it's so satisfying. So I really did appreciate that that was a significant challenge throughout the game. And if you did fail to stand offs oftenly, if enemies did make you flinch, you'd be down to essentially 1 HP health. So you were on the back foot immediately. Another aspect of this game's combat that I honestly could have used more of in this game was the one-on-one duels that took place. They were unique combat situations where it was you and one other enemy locked in a circular ring, just using swords on each other, no ninja weapons, no archery, anything of that nature. But on hard mode, oh, they were so challenging sometimes, and they just felt so rewarding because you needed to know how to parry during them if you wanted any chance in hell of beating them. And oh, they had a great dramatic flair to them, and a lot of times they were, you know, part of the story of the game, so they were definitely at high points of the story as well, very climactic moments of the story. Oh, and it just made it that much more immersive and that much more satisfying in terms of a narrative. So no, the duels were definitely a highlight of this game. I loved turning the difficulty up to hard mode eventually because, oh, it just made them so goddamn fun to play. Oh, I could use a side game of almost just dueling. They're that good. One thing I was hoping would be a little bit better in this game was the eventual lethal mode that was added via a patch. You know, you get to a point in a game where you do every little side thing, you start to get very, very overpowered and very strong. You know, so hard mode was eventually reaching the end of, you know, the difficulty it was offering me. It was reaching the end of the challenge it was offering me. And I was hoping lethal mode would fix that. But unfortunately, lethal mode is easier in a lot of ways than hard mode. Because in lethal mode, you deal damage a lot more quickly to enemies. And they deal a lot more damage much more quickly to you. But oftentimes you can usually get in a couple of quick hits in an enemy before you're completely surrounded. So, you know, so you're able to like dispatch enemies as they're coming at you very quickly. So they don't really have a chance to get around you and you're not having to watch multiple people at once. So unfortunately, even though lethal mode did up the damage you took, it didn't really seem to improve the AI as well, at least from what I found. So I actually switched back to hard mode because I found that was more of a challenge than lethal mode was. One thing I did notice in this game was enemy AI in terms of detecting you did seem to be a bit on the slow side. I did find it was quite easy to stealth in a lot of instances, and I did find it that enemies probably should have been able to notice you a bit more quickly in this game. But that aside, I did still find, you know, stealth missions quite fun. They just could have been a bit more difficult. And another thing with this game is there are a few instances where there are essentially, you know, like kind of major battles taking place. You know, it'll be you and maybe a dozen NPCs fighting another dozen NPCs. And it's really fun to see the chaos of combat happening all around you. And it's very much, I would play the game of, I want to see how many of my NPCs fighting on my side I can save before they're killed by the enemy. So I was very much always rushing to kill them as quickly as possible in order to save my allies. So that was a nice another little thing that they added to the gameplay that I enjoyed. Since there are so many different ways to tackle this game in terms of combat or missions, this game really could have done with a loadout system in terms of what, you know, bows you had equipped or what ninja items you had equipped, or even just what armor sets your character has on, because those definitely change your play style as well, because they can enhance your archery or they can enhance your sword combat and so on and so forth. So a loadout feature would have been nice. Major side quests are engaging in this game as well. They follow a lot of the main characters that you encounter. And even some of the smaller side quests have like a decent narrative flow to them as well. And I was invested in the little stories that were happening throughout Tsushima. But I will say a common thread through them all is a lot of them are just depressing as hell. And that kind of goes with what's happening in the game too, right? Essentially, you're fighting a enemy occupation of your country. So no, there's definitely some dark storytelling going on, and they tell it in a satisfying manner. There are also unique tales in this game that are side quests that offer you extremely good rewards, and they always have this cool kind of brushstroke introduction that introduce you to the lore of this particular tale and why it's important and what happens. And usually it has to do with getting, you know, a sweet new armor set or like a new sword ability. Like all the tales in this game are absolutely worth doing. So if you encounter, definitely do them right away if you can. So I've already said combat is a good part of what makes this game great. The visuals and the lighting are what make this game great in terms of environments. But another thing is just how much you can fucking customize Jin. The vanity system in terms of how he can look in this game is insane. And the hats he can wear, this game has some of the most badass and over-the-top hats I've ever seen in a game. Honestly, this game is ridiculous. You know, I don't consider myself a super vain person. I have moments. You know, we all want to look good once in a while, but when it comes to my video game characters, I am vain as fuck. A loadout system in this game would have been great, not only in a gameplay standpoint, but honestly, in terms of just how you want your character to look. There are so many different ways to make Jin look like an absolute badass motherfucker. There should have been some sort of system in place where you could just quickly like flip between ways you want to look, because I was constantly flipping between missions, you know, how he looked, because I just loved the visual feast I would get from all his you know, different sets of clothing that you could have him wear. And my personal favorite was the Gosaku armor set. Oh, I loved being able to dress as a badass, intimidating samurai in a full set of sweet fucking armor. This armor set made the game for me in a lot of ways. I loved watching Jin run around in this goddamn armor set and just wrecking fools. And another thing in terms of vanity in this game is the different katanas you can get. Oh, there's such a variety to them. A lot of them look fucking absolutely beautiful. And it's always a key accessory to the outfit you want Jin to wear. You know, you gotta have the right color katana to go with the armor set that he's wearing. And it was such a nice little thing. It's like, oh, do I want that orange katana with it? Or do I want the black one or the blue one? You know, oh, it was such a nice little thing that they added to the game. And honestly, the Pillars of Honor where you found like new katana sets, like they didn't do anything to change like the style of your weapon. It was purely aesthetic, but oh, it was always my number one favorite thing to find was those Pillars of Honor, because it's like, oh my God, I get a new katana. What does it look like? And oh, it was such a good part of the game. And another thing with the aesthetics is there's a white dye merchant and a black dye merchant in this game, which I find really funny personally, because generally those palette sets are ones that I gravitate towards a lot of the time. And I feel like probably a lot of people do too. Because I was wondering at the beginning of the game, I'm like, oh man, there's nothing that's really like a black color or like a white color in terms of armor. What's going on? And the fact that they had two different merchants dedicated specifically to those color palettes for all your armor sets, I thought was a pretty cool touch, and it definitely was something that hit me the right way. If you're like me and you're very much a completionist when it comes to these games, you know, you love to like scour the maps and do every little side mission and do every little side quest. Towards the last third of the game, you will notice that you are maybe a bit overpowered. You know, that happens in games a lot of the times if you are that type of player. It just kind of goes part and parcel with playing the game that way a lot of the times. That's why I was really hoping lethal difficulty would up the ante a bit, but it just didn't. So the game essentially becomes a matter of how do I want to murder people today? Because you have access to so many different abilities. You're just like, okay, do I want to kill these people using bombs? Or do I just want to run in with my sword or snipe them all from a distance? But that leads to its own level of fun. So I never got bored of that because there were so many different ways of just, well, killing folks. There were some genuinely surprising and heartbreaking moments during this game's story. So I did very much enjoy it overall. It was a solid experience narratively speaking. I found the main plot engaging throughout the journey for the most part. There definitely maybe were a few slower moments, but overall, like, definitely pretty solid narrative experience, I would say. And the ending of the game I did find satisfying as well. And during the main story and some of the side quests, I would often utter to myself, that's some pretty fucked up shit. And I'm pretty sure you guys will too, because there were genuinely some moments where I was just like, that is fucked up, dude. So, but it was always done in a way that I liked, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, there was some fucked up shit going on, but it made sense narratively speaking. It didn't make me angry. It just made me sad for the characters in the world I was playing. Yeah, this game can be very engrossing in terms of narrative, but it can also be very depressing in terms of, you know, some of the things you are witnessing, but not to a point where it will ruin the game. And in terms of characters for this game, especially the side characters, a lot of them are flawed individuals. They have, you know, motives that are less than ideal, and a lot of their actions fall into the gray area of the spectrum, but that just makes them more engaging to watch. Like, they're not cookie cutter good or bad, they're human, and that is infinitely more entertaining to watch. The ending to this game gave me some major feels, and in a good way. It was a satisfying conclusion, and it left me wanting more. A lot of games can seem to tell a good story, but they just can't seem to stick the landing. And I'm happy to say that this game does not fall into that category. It tells a good story. It has a satisfying conclusion for the conclusion I got. Yes, it does have multiple endings. So, and I did read what the other ending was, and I think I got the better one, to be honest. So, no, it does stick the landing in terms of an ending. I am excited to see if there is another game. I really hope there is a Ghost of Tsushima 2. Definitely would love to play it. Like, just have them refine the combat more. Like, the game already looked so fucking good. Oh, I can only imagine how it would look on PS5. You know, and the story was engaging enough that I definitely want to see what happens next. In terms of sound, the Japanese voice work in this game is fucking awesome. Japanese voice actors are some of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, for a good reason. And this game is just another illustration of why. I didn't play with the English voice acting in this game, but usually games of this budget do have quality English voice acting, so I can't attest to it just because I didn't sample it. Another thing that made me enjoy this game quite a bit in terms of sound is the fact that I'm a One Piece fan. And Jin, our main character, is voiced by Zoro from One Piece, who is my favorite character. So getting to run around the island of Tsushima, playing a guy who sounds like, well, who is Zoro essentially from One Piece, just added another level of enjoyment for me. And it just, every time he would talk at length and I would think of Zoro from One Piece, it would just put a big smile on my face. So I did get a bit more out of the voice work because of that overlap. The game, in terms of music, does have some very good dramatic pieces, but there was very few pieces that really stuck with me in my mind for an extended period of time. You know, there's been a lot of games where I'll hear a piece of music and I'll be like, holy shit, I need to go download that soundtrack, or I need to go find that one piece of music on YouTube and listen to it for an hour, or something of that nature. And this game didn't really do that to me. The music served its purpose. It did a good job, but it didn't have anything that just kind of grabbed me by the horns. So no, it's definitely a plus, but once again, nothing that was amazing. There was one piece in the beginning that was quite good, but it's hard to say. I could have been maybe really distracted by the visuals of the game, so I didn't focus enough on the music. I don't know, but it is something worth mentioning. In conclusion, this is a fantastic game. It is another jewel in Sony's crown of PlayStation exclusives. And it is definitely a must-play for anyone who has a PlayStation 4 at this moment. And especially if you're a fan of open world games. And I love the Japanese aesthetic, so that also did more for me in terms of the game's visuals. If you go into it knowing that it is a solid open world experience and not a revolution of the genre, I think you'll enjoy it a bit more, because that's very much how I was looking at it. I didn't really expect it to be, you know, the game that breaks the mold of open world games. If you are a fan of open world games that have great environments, solid voice acting, good combat, and a satisfying story, This is a game you definitely should play. Absolutely. And in my opinion, it's definitely worthy of being in anyone's video game collection, 100%. Because of this game, Sucker Punch is now on my radar in terms of games they develop, absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do on the PS5 going forward. So no, definitely play this game, check it out, and let me know what you guys think, okay? Thanks for joining me for another game break. I'll be back soon. Take it easy.